Hi, sweet friends. I'm Emma Watterson, hostess of Root Tips to Wingtips Health Podcast, where you'll learn recipes and health tips to stay balanced and have a healthy mind, body, and soul. I'm a certified health coach and specialize in NLP, hypnotherapy, energy work, and healing. Each week, we will dive into health topics to discuss ideal mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Let's jump in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Root Tips to Wingtips podcast. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Miss Hélène Caniac. She's a former criminal investigator and Air Force turned professional career and mindset coach. She would like to describe herself first and foremost as an ever-curious, adventurous human determined to help folks boldly redefine success, ask for what they want so they can belong wherever they go, from the boardrooms to Burning Man. Hey, Hélène, it's so great to catch up with you today. How are you doing?
Hey, Emma. I'm feeling really giddy and privileged to be here. It's been a long time since you and I have reconnected, and your calming presence is ever a joy to be with. So I'm stoked. It's sunny. It's a beautiful day here in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm loving that springtime vibe that's come with the day. How about you?
Awesome. Well, yes, down here in Virginia, it is just as lovely and beautiful out. So I'm glad that you have the same experience there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm so glad to reconnect and share this space with you today.
Yeah, it's really fun. Like connection is something that's grown more and more important to me in my life and the work that I've done. And it's actually been the big driving force behind, how I ended up here and why I do the work that I do. Because I kind of learned the hard way and the long way that without connection, no achievement in the world feels like enough. And there's no amount of hard work or hustle or no diploma, nothing that I could do that would make up for my lack of connection or community that I was desperately seeking. So being able to reconnect with you is just one more joy in that pile.
Well, likewise, it's such, I think more than anything, I've been craving connection as well. And I think especially I'm glad that now that we're post-pandemic, we're able to kind of get out more and have a little more freedom to connect than we had in the past. And likewise, I'm so glad that we're able to connect in this space today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got started? That's quite a transition to go from a criminal investigator for the Air Force and now you're a professional career and mindset coach.
Yes, a lot of people are surprised by that transition because they don't immediately see the correlation. But in my mind's eye, it actually goes back to how I describe myself, which you so beautifully put, right? Have always been a very curious person that wanted to help others. And I have a strong sense of adventure. So that's what led me to becoming an officer in the Air Force. It's what led me to do the challenging yet rewarding and fulfilling job of being a criminal investigator, right? Where I got to talk to people, ask them questions, get to the bottom of the truth with, in my mind's eye, the end goal of helping them, right? Helping them get clear, helping them get justice, helping them be acquitted from something. So for me, the methods and the modalities were very similar. The intention, that purpose was the same and remained constant. And so by the time I decided to transition, take those skills, take what I was good at, what I loved doing, what I found most fulfilling, and find a different way, and in my opinion, an even better way of helping people as a professional mindset coach, then to me, that transition becomes very easy because I do the same thing now every day. I get to talk to people one-on-one. I ask them questions they've never been asked before, and I try to make them feel safe enough and comfortable enough to be vulnerable with me for their sake. So rather than giving me answers that I then put into a report that I give to an attorney, then give to a commander to make a decision about their livelihood, every piece of information I gather from my clients is not used for my benefit. It's used for theirs. And so the privilege that is and puts me in, while also leaving me feeling like I'm using my best skill set, it makes the transition to me effortless. Yet I do want to get to your other part of the question, which is like, how did I do that? And I think I started off the way I think a lot of coaches do, which is at first I started out as a client of coaching. I got into a place in my life where I had peaked at a very young age, or relatively young age. I had checked every box that I had set out for myself. I owned a condo in LA. I had a 6-figure salary. I was working what was this dream job that I worked really hard for. I had, 2 bachelor's degrees, MBA. I had a romantic partner. I had a dog. And I just got to this place where I was like, what's next? And I didn't know what that was. And I kind of resented even the question that I was asking myself, because it implies, right? Every time we ask ourselves what's next, it implies that what's now isn't enough. And so when I was in that state, just before the start of COVID, I had a friend who was doing a challenge and invited me to come participate. And I was like, sure, I'll help you. I'll support you in this challenge that you're running. And that invitation led to me, hiring her as my coach to help me figure out that answer. What was next? What is the next box I get to write in and check off so I can maybe derive a newfound satisfaction? And what I ended up learning and realizing was, rather than what is the very next step I need to take, rather I learned how to embrace uncertainty, which in my opinion was a skill set that has served me more than any to-do list, than any 5-year plan ever has. Because that way I wasn't scared of not knowing what was next, which meant whatever decision I made was rooted in what I wanted to do and not what I was afraid of being stuck doing. So yeah, that's kind of like the how, the long and short of it. I started off as a client and then realized that it was something that was a passion of mine, that people were coming to me asking for help anyway. And I was like, I want more tools in this toolkit. I want to help them out more. I want to do it the best I can and support them in the best way. And so that's what led me on this path to getting more. I think I'm at 13 coaching certifications now, just so I could help whoever crossed my path and wanted my support, that I would have a way, a modality, a tool that could help them uncover truth within, but more importantly, the self-compassion it takes for them to appreciate and find satisfaction in the life that they're already living.
That is incredible. And I loved, it sounds like you're empowering people and giving people the opportunity to kind of redefine who they are as a person and how they identify. And thank you for telling us how you got to where you are today. And I love that you've transitioned your experience from being in the Air Force to asking. I love what you said about asking those questions they'd never been asked before, and transitioning it from, hey, you're going to give it to a lawyer to run it up the chain of command, versus now you're using it to their better good to empower them and get kind of down to the root cause of where they are and how you can help them more as well. That's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. That empowering piece is key because, my grandmother, who I live with, right, that's a definite new thing in my life that I'm grateful for. But I made the choice when I got out of the military recently to move in to live with my grandmother. I own the house. It doesn't matter. But something she always, gently nags me about. She's like, why aren't you a therapist? Like, why don't you go back to school? And why aren't you a licensed therapist instead of a coach? And I tell her it's a different audience. And also it's a different methodology. And what drew me to coaching, especially both as a client and as a professional in the field, is that empowerment piece, that the ownership, the onus is on the client to make decisions on their behalf. And what it doesn't do is it does not create a codependent relationship. I didn't want that. I didn't want them feeling they had to get my advice as if I were a mentor, or they didn't have to talk to me and bemoan their life circumstance, every 2 weeks just to feel like they could be complete. I wanted them not to need me. I wanted them to realize that they were all that they needed. And so coaching, I think, is just such a good venue for that, for people who maybe are kind of like graduating therapy, as I like to say, and who are ready to be like, you know what, I have the awareness. What do I do with it? Right. So that empowerment piece that you mentioned and heard is so spot on, because it's very much like what drives what I like doing.
I love that. And I think what is also empowering is that you're, like you said, you're putting the onus and the responsibility on them, and they get to take that ownership and run with it. And it's nice when you have a toolbox. That was even nicer when you know what to do with those tools in your toolbox, because you can have all the diplomas, all the certificates, all the tools in the toolbox that you want, though, until you're like, okay, that's great. Now what do I do? And I loved what you said about the, okay, what next mentality, as opposed to, I loved what you said is that it implies that right now is not good enough. And I think, well, I'll speak for myself. I've always struggled with the I'm not good enough. And so the what's next? What's the next check in the box that I can do? And when we live in a check in the box society, it's when you do something for a cookie or for a check in the box, you're just doing it to do it. And rather than how can I not only apply this to my own life, though, how can I help others apply it to theirs?
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of mentioned, I know you work with a lot of parents, and, a lot of your audience probably, I would imagine, struggle with this with their kids, right? Like, we're raised to incentivize accomplishment. And so we pass that on, and it's easy, right? It's a tangible outcome, and it makes it easy for people to mark and denote progress. Yet it can kind of chafe against this desire to create a growth as opposed to a fixed mindset. Because if you're always prioritizing the outcome, people they learn not to derive fulfillment from the process. And so that's when you have, kids who quit if they don't get it right the first time. Because they learn that unless I get it perfect, unless I get it right, unless I get an A, then I didn't learn anything. And I don't participate in this activity. As opposed to someone who, is okay with failing. They don't really care about the outcome. They're willing to keep trying at it because the process of figuring it out, even if it comes at getting it wrong, is still worthwhile to them. And so I can imagine like how challenging that must be for parents who, you want to demonstrate progress. You want to also be able to measure it for yourself and for your kids. And everyone likes a treat. Everyone likes a cookie, right? Like you said, Emma. Who wouldn't want one? I think where it gets tricky is when we start thinking that that cookies always have to be earned, and then you can't just ask for a cookie because you want one. And so that's kind of gets into like the work that I do, is helping people remember, hey, you can just bake your own cookies, right? Especially when I'm working with adults, right? You just bake or buy your own cookies. You don't have to earn that. If you're hungry, and you want a sweet treat, get a damn cookie. So that's very much what I try to help people embrace. But I'm curious, Emma, like, how have you kind of encountered that checklist mentality and like worked with or against it, and, more specifically in your life, especially as a parent? Like, I'm curious, how have you noticed that, if at all, crop up in your life?
That's a great question. And yeah, it's from a very young age, I've always had a kind of a check in the box mentality. Like you said, okay, what's next? What can I do next? How can I like appeasing my overachiever brain is, and especially having kids too, is I know you talked about like what can we pass along to our kids too. And there's some things that we do want to pass along to our kids. And there's some things, I think my favorite phrase is, how do you spell leadership? And it's spelled EXAMPLE. which is example. So you're setting an example. And I think that's a lot of times what we're kind of unsaid taught, that we want to set the best example for our kids. And that's a desire, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, is for me as a parent, I want to set the best example for my kids. I don't want to have a do as I say, not as I do mentality, especially for my kids. And your actions always speak louder than your words. So when I mean, even from getting up every morning and like making my bed and having a good morning routine and setting myself up for a good day, I try to demonstrate that for my kids and do the best that I can. And finding that harmony rather than the myth of balance, finding that harmony between how can I demonstrate and be an example for them, and also set myself up to win and set them up to win as well. So going back to that check in the box mentality, it's not to say I don't have things to do or things that I want to accomplish, though I set myself up for little wins every day. And when you can set yourself up for wins, it kind of gives you that dopamine hit of, oh my gosh, look, I baked my own cookie. I put that check in the box. I accomplished this, and that gives you the motivation to kind of do the next thing and the next thing. And so yes, it's great to have lofty goals and then set mini goals along the way. And figuring out like, what do you really want at the end of the day? Begin with the end in mind and figuring out, okay, reverse engineer it, figuring out what you want. And what are you learning along the way too? Like taking those moments along the way to stop and smell the roses, to learn and pick up little things. And there's also a phrase, I can't remember exactly who said it, but they said, there's never failure. You either win or you learn. And when you put it in that context, it makes it so that the only way that you're going to fail is if you truly quit everything. And so when you make a safe environment for your kids to quote unquote fail in, and let them know that there really is no failure, just try it again. Get back up on the bike, get back up on the scooter, get back up, bake the next cookie, do whatever you need to get to where you want to go, and keep going, keep trying, keep and also, like, going back to what you were talking about in the beginning too, about that sense of connection, creating that community, redefining yourself, figuring out that new piece of you. What are you trying to figure out? And you get to redefine yourself every day. And I think that's huge. So, and I'm so glad that you're helping so many people do that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm grateful to be doing it. And I love everything you said. No, most notably, I hadn't heard that, like how to spell leadership. It's, the word example, right? Leading by example and modeling that behavior. And also setting ourselves up for little wins. I think that's so powerful. One of the ways that I think sometimes I try to like improve on people's to-do list, right? Because they tend to come to me and they're like you said, overachievers, right? Historically high achievers. Maybe they've had experiences of burnout or overwhelm in the past. They know what it's like to be satisfied, and now they know what it's like to not be satisfied. But they all know how to do a good to-do list. And I think one of the first things I do is like, I usually tell them, like, take your to-do list. Okay, now what's 10% on that list? Like, write everything you need to do and now pick 10%. Not even 3 things. Like, just look at it. What's 10%? That's your new 100%. Because I know you wrote that to-do list expecting your capacity to be 200% of what it actually is. And so 10% is like a gentle, gracious, realistic goal, especially when I'm talking to historically high and overachievers. But then I also suggest like, okay, rather than just to-do list after to-do list, like where are you not giving yourselves, like where are we not giving ourselves the credit, right? So this is something I practice as well in terms of small wins beyond just like the routine and making our bed and that sort of thing, or getting ourselves the cookie. It's realizing, wait, where have I already baked cookies that I'm just not choosing not to eat? Like, where did I spend all this time and energy that I maybe not giving myself the credit for deriving pleasure out of? So it's like starting the list with like, wait, what are all the things you've actually already done today? Right? Like writing things that you've already accomplished on your to-do list and then checking them off so you can see, wait, I didn't do nothing today. I didn't get nothing done, as we like to say. I actually got a lot done. It's just stuff I don't give myself credit for. Whether it's getting out of bed, making the bed, walking the dog, feeding your kid, making sure they got to the bus on time. There's so much that I know for a fact is on no one's to-do list, but they do every day and deserve to give themselves credit for it, especially parents. Like it's such a hard thing. And we were talking about earlier this harmony, but also how harmony can be tough to find when we derive identity from other people, right? So you mentioned like, as a parent, we tend to identify ourselves as someone else's mom or dad or parent in general. And how do we reprioritize what we want, what we need to do to keep our cup full so that we can pour into that of our children or that of the people in our lives? And so I think that's one of the big conflicts around harmony and like work-life balance. I think, I have more on harmony and leadership, that it's a connection, but I want to make sure that I'm answering the questions that come to your mind first.
No, I love that too. When we were talking about harmony as well, is and redefining ourselves too. I think that's such a key thing, and it's kind of what we're trained to do. Is when we introduce ourselves, it's like, who are you and what do you do? And something that we may have learned as coaches too is like, how do we get to show up today? And empowering your clients to be, how do I get to show up today? Who do I want to be? And yes, sometimes it's good to to jog people's memories and like how you're associated, like, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so's mom, or I'm so-and-so's wife, or I work at blah, blah, blah. And just kind of jogging their memory. And also like you said too, is you don't have to, you can be whoever you want to be. And I think that can be empowering, and to some people it might be a little bit scary, is especially coming out of the military too, is you've been, although I've never been enlisted in the military, I've been working for the military for a long time, and I can only imagine where you're basically told what to do from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, and then transitioning out of that too is, how do you get to identify as today? Who do you get to be? Who do you get to be now? And who do you want to be? Who do you get to be? And figuring that out, and having, I love what you said about the difference between coaches and therapists, is kind of the difference between a codependent relationship. Like, you're empowering people to not only give them a toolbox that you're saying, here's your toolbox, and when you need to do XYZ, this is what you do with a screwdriver. Here's what you do with a wrench. Here's what you do with a hammer. And you're giving them that tools and a guidebook to say, hey, okay, if this comes up, this is what you do. And if you need me, I'm here. Though you're not making them dependent on you. You're empowering them to go off and do their thing. They get to be their own humans.
Yeah, it's definitely that analogy of like, you can buy a man a fish, or, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, or you could teach him how to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. And I feel like my work is not even like teaching people how to fish. It's first and foremost asking them, do you even like fish? Like, why are you here? Like, you don't even, most of the time I'm like, why do you want to fish so badly? You don't even like fish. You don't even like fishing. And they're so busy, like in this analogy, especially military folks transitioning out, and all people going through transitions, I would say, we tend to focus so primarily on the how am I going to do this? Like what I'm supposed to do and how am I going to get there? And so that'd be like in this analogy of someone being like, okay, I know I need to learn how to fish. What kind of rod do I need? What kind of bait do I need to use? What's a good fishing spot for me to go to? And very few people stop and get asked the question, wait, for what purpose did you actually want to fish? And when I ask all of my clients this at the beginning of every single one of our sessions, they really have to pause and hesitate because they realize they haven't asked themselves that question. And it's the most important thing that I impart in every single program, whether it's a communication program, like I run a Big Talk Academy and it's really fun, whether it's Have the Audacity, whether it's a military GTFO program. Everything begins with the end in mind, as you put it, right? Which is, what do you really want at the end of the day? What do you really want going forward? And giving them permission to take off those blinders. Because like you mentioned in the military, like there's so much sacrifice of what we want, of our self-expression, which is really like my bread and butter, right? You can't wear whatever you want. You can't say whatever you want. You can't protest in the streets if you wanted to, right? There's a lot of what might have been a desire of yours that you have to dim down and shut off. You can't live wherever you want. You can't take vacation whenever you want. You really can't quit either. Like that's the other piece. It's not just signing a contract. It's one of the few contracts that if you were to like break could have legal, like criminal implications on you breaking it. Right. So going AWOL becomes a criminal offense. Whereas if you were to just like quit your corporate job, maybe you would owe them money, but they're not going to come after you in criminal court. And so there's a lot of coercive elements to being in the military when it comes to our self-expression that can impede what options we see as available. And I love what you said about like, it really is about kind of going back and like imagining those possibilities and like remembering who you are and what you want. And my role, I really see it as like, okay, I know you only see it as this is your only option. Like you have to do the same job as you did when you were in the military. You have to match your salary. You have to get the same benefits. But you're still living in the confines of the rules can't be bent. They can only be broken and you're terrified of breaking the rules. Like these rules are in a game that when you step out of it, do not apply anymore. So now that you get to remember who you are and what you want and act upon it, that's when that empowerment really begins. And I think I learned, I appreciated talking to one of my clients recently who said, and framed this very nicely. She said, Hélène, you don't just help people figure out what they want. You help us remember and give us permission to want things again, which was really impactful for me to hear because it reminded me like, yeah, one of the biggest things you forget how to do when you're in the military or a big structure like that, or a big machine, is you forget how to want things just for yourself. Sacrifice becomes the norm, and you forget how to want things in the first place and giving yourself permission to allow yourself to just eat the cookie, do the thing that brings you joy without the connotation of obligation or duty or service. And I imagine, Emma, that this is probably something that as a parent is not unfamiliar territory, right? Like there's definitely a narrative, I feel like, in parenthood that you have to give, you have to sacrifice. Like your children are the most important thing about you, and the most important thing about your life. So how have you incorporated harmony in your life that's allowed you to kind of center yourself back in that narrative?
I love that question. And I was thinking about like as our kids start out as babies and as they go through all the developmental stages and get to my son is now 13 and he'll be 14 later this year. And it's such an amazing process to see them go from, these babies where we're doing everything for them to them learning how to do basic skills. I mean, everything from crawling to walking to feeding themselves and learning how to use the potty and all of that stuff, to now they're becoming their own people, and that and encouraging and learning how to be themselves and to have their own opinions. And that can be sometimes hard for parents too, is for, like, they've been dependent on their parents for so long to, okay, I'm setting out, here's your breakfast, here's your lunch, here's your dinner, now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do this. And so it's definitely learning how to incorporate that, and then also learning to empower them to be their own people too. So that's a great question. So I feel like we could talk for hours and hours on this. Though, is there a way for our listeners to connect with you if they have more questions? I mean, especially if they're military members, or even if they're non-military members, if they're going through any kind of transition, if they're new graduates, or or they've just switched jobs. Is there a way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me, they can connect with me easily on my website. Hélène Can Help. My first name is spelled HELENE CAN and then HELP.com. And then also Hélène Can Help on Instagram is probably my biggest social media presence. It's still relatively small, but it gives you a good feel if you're like, I don't know who this chick is and I want to know what her personality's like. That's a very quick way of finding out what my personality is like and whether you'd even like working with me. So yeah, I'd say the Instagram for just like general, like, who is this? And you can always like message me on that. But if you're not a social media person and want to just like book a call and schedule it, yeah, my website, HéleneCanHelp.com. There's even going to be like a military tab there, so you can click on that and understand what I offer military folks specifically. But there are two different ways to contact me. You can fill out a form on that site, or you can just immediately schedule a 20-minute curiosity call with me. It's complimentary, it's free, but I love making people feel confident about whatever decision they make next. And so usually that involves me asking them questions, but also giving them the chance to ask me whatever they want. And so those are the two best ways. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love that you make yourself accessible too. I think that's one of the biggest things. And either as a parent or people in general, again, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it's really hard to reach out for help because sometimes there's a stigma around reaching out for help, especially when it comes to mental or emotional health. And I think trying to reduce that stigma and just reaching out, it is a sign of strength when you reach out for help, because you realize that you're not in this alone. You don't have to be alone in trying to figure out the next steps and where to go next and what to do next. And again, I love how you're empowering people to figure out, okay, what do they really want? Where do they want to go next? What is their end goal? Like, where do they want to go? And even if they don't know exactly where I don't even know what to do next. You're really, again, empowering those people to figure out, okay, what do they really want? And I think that's the biggest thing of all. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate, and I love sharing this space with you, and I hope we get to connect again soon.
Thank you very much, Emma. It's been a true privilege. And, I hope you and your audience have gained something, and have taken in your insight in a new light, because it's definitely fantastic to be a witness to it. And so thank you very much for having me. It's been a true privilege and honor.
Absolutely. And what I'll do is I will make sure that I post your Instagram, Facebook, all your contact information when I post this as well.
Yeah, just leave out the social security number. I don't think they need that yet.
I would definitely leave that out. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Helen. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode and sharing this space and time with me. I hope you got some great new insights, and if you did, please leave a review, add a comment, question, and/or suggestion, and share with a friend.